Hi there, welcome to Create with Copper. Today we're making this wirework pendant with herringbone weave. And if you want to see more techniques and tutorials for making jewellery, hit that subscribe button. Now let's get weaving. I do love the herringbone weave around a bead, and I use it on its own quite often, but I thought it'd be interesting to use it in a wirework piece for this tutorial. So the materials you need for this are 1mm diameter copper wire, which is 18 gauge, 0.4mm diameter copper wire, which is 26 gauge, and a bead. I have an imperial jasper bead here, which is about 7mm diameter, but anything between 6 and 8mm diameter would be ideal for this project. And the tools needed are your basic pliers, so your wire cutters, round nose pliers and flat nose pliers, and an awl will be useful. For this project I need 3 pieces of the 1mm or 18 gauge wire, and these are 25cm or 10 inches long. For this first part I'm just using one of them. And I've also got a length of the 0.4mm diameter wire, which is about 1.5 meters long. So I'm going to start by wrapping that once around the frame wire. And what I want to achieve is one whole loop, but to get it tight to the wire I just need to overshoot that a little bit. And then once I've got it tight and neat, I'll trim off the excess. Now normally I'd work the herringbone weave with a 0.6mm diameter wire. This is the finest gauge that I'd do it with, and I'm using the 0.4 so I can continue with the wire weaving afterwards. So I'll slide that back onto the 1mm frame wire and position it just above halfway down, and then thread on the bead. And I want to hold that so the loop of the 0.4mm diameter wire is flush with the bead. I'm then going to gently take that wire around the side of the bead. I'm trying to keep it tight close to the bead. And at the top of the bead I'll wrap it once around the frame wire. I'm then going to take that 0.4 wire down the other side of the bead and again wrap it once around the frame wire. And at this point you can adjust how much of the bead is showing between those wires. I'm then going to just continue taking the wire around the side of the bead and wrapping it once around the frame wire at the end. And each time I do this, I want to make sure that the new piece of wire I'm laying down is behind but next to the previous bit of wire. And you need to keep a little bit of tension on the wire just to make sure each of those weaves is tight and flush with the bead. And I'll just keep doing this until I'm happy with the size of the herringbone weave that I've got. Now I think I'm happy with that. I've got 9 wraps on each side. So that's the herringbone weave done, and I'm ready to start weaving the side of the pendant. The first thing I want to do is make a bend in the wire, and I want to leave enough space between the herringbone weave and the bend to fit 2 more of those frame wires. Then I'll place those wires in from behind. And I'm going to start the weave to fix them in position. So working from the back, I'm going to take that weaving wire over the top wire. And I'll just take it through to the front. And then if I turn this over, I might be able to hold it a little bit easier. And I'm just going to wrap the weaving wire 5 times around that middle wire. I'm then going to wrap over the middle wire and what's currently the top wire twice. I'll then wrap that middle wire again 5 times. And then I'll wrap over what is currently the bottom wire and the middle wire twice. And that's the weave I'm going to use for this part of the pendant. So it's wrapping 5 times over the middle wire, twice over the top 2 wires, 5 times around the middle wire, and twice over the bottom 2 wires. And I'm going to repeat that weave up to the top of the pendant. Once you've woven a little way along, you can start to bend those wires around to the top of the herringbone weave. And I'm keeping this weave flat so it's all facing forwards. And then continue the weave up to the top. So I've now reached the top, and I can refine that curve later. But now I want to get started on these other 2 lower wires. So I'm going to add in another piece of 0.4mm wire. This is 1.5 meters long again, but actually you probably only need about 1 meter for this piece. And I'm just going to thread it through so I can hold on to the end and wrap that bottom wire 3 times. I'll turn it to the front so I can see what I'm doing a little bit easier, and I'll wrap over both wires twice. I'm then going to wrap what's now the top wire 3 times again. It's the same wire that I wrapped before. And then I'll wrap over both wires twice. And that's the weave I'm going to do for this little section. So I just want to get a little way along with that weave. And then I want to bend those 2 wires over the front of the original wire below the herringbone weave. And this is basically folding it over the top, but I'm also bending it so it's heading kind of downwards. And just try to make sure that those weaving wires stay quite tight around the curve. I'm then going to trim off that tail that I started with. And then I want these 2 wires to bend gently downwards. And I'm just going to continue that same weave that I started with 3 wraps on 1 wire, 2 wraps on both wires, just down a little way further. And then I'll continue the coil on the single wire. And what I'm going to do with these 2 wires is bend them right the way round in a tight circle so they start heading in the same direction as the other piece of weaving. So I want enough coil on this single wire to go round that tight circle. And I am going to add extra coils on here because I will be using that up the side. Once I've got that, I'll bend the bare wire around first. That'll be on the inside. And I'm trying to make that as tight a circle as possible. Then I'm going to take that coiled wire around the outside of that bare wire. I'm trying to keep that coil quite tight. And I can just check how that looks and play with the placement a little bit. This will be the finished bottom of the pendant, so it's worth taking your time to get it right. So now I'll secure those 2 wires together with another 2 wraps over both wires. And I'll continue coiling that single wire again. I'm trying to space out where I'm attaching the 2 wires together quite a long way. I do tend to judge this by eye, but this is around about 30 wraps. And then I'll take 2 wraps over both wires to secure them together again. And coil that single wire once more. So now I've got enough coiling to reach up to around about the top of the pendant. What I want to do with these 2 wires is twist them, so the more bare wire will end up on the outside once you've got to the top of the pendant. And I tend to twist this and curve it around at the same time. And this is all the weaving done for this step. So the only thing left to do is to just check those curves. Make sure you're happy with the shapes that are being made and the position of the wires. And just keep adjusting them until you're happy. So I've taken my time and I think I've gotten these about where I want them. Obviously they'll all need fixing into position, but I'll do that as I start to create the bail next. I'm going to use all 6 of the frame wires for making the bail in 2 sets of 3. So to help lock them together, I'm going to swap some of them around. And I'm going to exchange the bottom wire of the first weave I did with the wire that's coming out of the herringbone weave. So I'm just going to curve those wires gently so that they're almost straight upwards for the bail. And to lock in that new wire, I'll go round that and the middle wire twice. This continues the weave as previously. And I'll just continue that weave over the bail. So I'll go over the middle wire 5 times, over the top 2 wires twice, over just the middle wire 5 times, and then over the bottom 2 wires twice, exactly as I wove previously. For the remaining 3 wires, I want them coming up on the right hand side of the bail, so I need to change the direction they're going in at the moment. So for that front wire, which is the one remaining from the original 3 wire weave, I'm just going to hook that around everything that's there towards the back and up in the direction that I want it to go. And then I'm going to bend the other 2 wires to join it. I can use my pliers to help create a clean bend, and I'm taking care to make sure that those bends are hidden behind the other weave. And I can play with the angles a bit to make sure that that's sitting right beside the other weave. And I'm going to use the same weave on this set of wires as for the other 3 on the bail. So weaving around the centre wire 5 times, the bottom 2 wires twice, the centre wire 5 times, and the top 2 wires twice. Once I think I've woven enough length, I'm going to bend the bail into shape. And I'm going to start with that second weave because it'll be in the middle of the bail. I can just kick out the wires so they're not in the way. And once I've got a shape that I'm happy with, I'll follow that around with the other weave. And I'm going to cross the 2 weaves over as I go. Now that results in the bail leaning towards the back, so I'll just adjust it so it's kind of central and check that I'm happy with the positioning. And now I need to decide what to do with the remaining wires. I know I want another little bit of wire work on the left hand side, so I'm going to use the inner 2 wires on the right hand side of the pendant for this. So I'll just curve the first wire into position and then follow it with the second wire. And I'll continue to weave those 2 wires together as I go. There's 5 wraps on 1 wire, 2 wraps on both wires, 5 wraps on 1 wire, 2 wraps on both wires. And to help fix them in position, I can take that weaving wire through and around at the top of the herringbone weave. And then I can just continue the weave. Once we've got a little way out from the bail, I'm going to create another tight curve. So I'll take the inside wire around and I'll make that as tight as I can. Then I'll put a few extra coils on the other wire and follow that curve around. I'll then wrap those 2 wires together twice and continue the weave down for a little way. I'll then finish those wires off by creating another tight loop with the bare wire sitting on the top and the coiled wire following it behind. I can then trim off the excess. Now I notice I've got a little bit of a gap at the front where I swap those wires over. So I'm going to use the middle wire of that 3. Bring it forward, trim it and then tuck it in to fill that space. I can then tuck that out of the way and cut off the excess. Now for the outermost left-hand wire, I'm just going to bring that forwards, then create a small loop and tuck that flat against the inside of the bail. Then I'll trim the other left-hand wire and just tuck that in at the back. I'm going to use that final wire to neaten up the edge a little bit. So I'm going to take the remaining weaving wire through and I'm going to take it around that coil at the front to hold everything in place. So I'll use my awl just to make a small space. Then I can take my weaving wire through and around that coil. I'm then going to coil around that remaining wire. And you can stitch through the weave at any point if you want to secure it again. Then I'll create another small loop at the end of that wire, trim the excess, and tuck that behind the herringbone weave. I just need to trim that weaving wire, and my pendant's finished. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please press the like button below. Don't forget you can subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.